What is up, everyone? Chris Manning here from Locked On Cavs. It's a little Locked On crossover today. Tony East, the great Tony East, dare I say, from Locked On
Wow.
Pacers with me. Look, I bring the energy. I put my guests over the top. This is an honor and a privilege, sir. We're going to talk about Caris LeVert, a popular Cavs trade target. We're just going to dive into all that because it seems like a good time with the trade deadline coming up and him being such a common Cavs option, at least as we talk about it. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get into today's show, I want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, where you should go subscribe to Locked On Cavs right now and help us get, we're over 1,000 now. We're in that spot we want to be. Help us get even higher and take us to the spot we want to get to. But Tony, how are you, buddy? What's going on?
Doing very good. Excited to talk about Caris LeVert and the Cavaliers. And really what I'm excited about, Chris Manning, is 2 weeks and 2 days from now, I'll never have to talk about trades again this season. And I can go back to focusing on basketball games.
I thought you were about to say, like, I don't have to talk about trades ever again. I'm like, sir, you're gonna get like mailbag questions like the day after the trade deadline about like if your team, the team you cover, the Indiana Pacers, like doesn't trade Miles Turner or something at the deadline, which like, who knows? But like, we'll see if we get there. You'll just be getting questions about that from the listeners about that anyway. But we're gonna talk about Caris LeVert because the Cavs are not a team that needs to trade for Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner, unless they just really want to play like actual three centers all the time. But Tony, I want to just start here. There's been reporting from like Jake Fisher and others about what's going on with the Pacers. And then they've, the owner Herb Simon has come out, like a couple months ago now. Time doesn't feel real, frankly, but like he has said, we're not going to do a full scale teardown. And some of the reported price we've seen from people like Fisher and others that it's 2 first-round picks for Caris LeVert. So I want to just ask you, as someone like covering this team day to day, thinking about this team a lot, do you think Caris LeVert is like available in the way that like actually makes him a possible trade target when we're looking at here?
I would say yes. But I would say that to the extent that the Pacers situation merits that he is available. That requires more explanation. That was a poor way of saying that. But like I would say the same about Miles Turner because LeVert is good, obviously. Before last night's game where he returned from his calf injury against the Pelicans, we're recording this Tuesday for you listening to Locked On Cavs right now. His prior 10 games before that, he averaged 25 points per game, right? He's clearly very talented. He's playing really well right now. Caris LeVert is. The Pacers are 17-31 despite that, right? And like, just think naturally about the NBA and team building. When you're 17-31 and you missed the playoffs the year before and you've been under 500 2 years in a row, you naturally have to think about how good your team really is. The Pacers are not expensive, but like middle of the road in terms of how expensive their team is. They're not winning at all. Basically, since they've traded Oladipo, they've been a bad basketball team, right? So clearly the pieces they have don't fit. We all know these guys are good. Their stats are good. They've been good on prior teams. They get raving reviews from their old teams and old teammates and stuff. Caris LeVert being of those guys. But the team isn't good. So the Pacers need to make changes just on that alone. They're not good, and they need to retool, rebuild, whatever they need to do. Now, with LeVert and Turner specifically, the reason they are available to the extent that it makes sense from a team building perspective is after the trade deadline, both of those guys become expiring contracts the next time they can be traded, and their value just naturally drops, right? So trading LeVert and Turner now, and as you talked about their high asking prices that's been reported, those are probably too high for how good those players are, but that is why they can claim that that's the asking price right now, is because they still have a year and a half left on their deal, and they're more valuable now than they would be if they traded them in the summer. So do I think LeVert's available? Yeah. I mean, the team is bad. He's not a natural fit, and after this year becomes an expiring contract. So yeah, I think it makes sense for the Pacers to be considering that and for him to be available given where they're at.
So as we're recording this, the Pacers are 13th in the East at 17-31. They are 13 and a half games back of the top seed in terms of the 10 seed, because they always forget the play-in exists. 6.5 games back as we're currently recording this behind the Washington Wizards. So a play-in playoff tournament, I mean, it feels far away. And I think there's like, Tony, you tell me if you disagree. I think this is a team that clearly, talent-wise, I think where they're at seems to be above Detroit and Orlando, but it feels like they're kind of stuck otherwise in between some of these teams that have maybe underperformed this year, let's say Atlanta, and then some of the teams like Cleveland that have maybe overperformed and are kind of more in the thick of the playoff race as we understand it right now. I mean, the Cavs are like 10 games over 500. Like that's just ahead of where Indiana's at. I guess, like, do you, just based on what Herb Simon has said, based on how they've seemingly have talked about this and talked around what this season has been, do you get the sense that, like, this is a team that is, like, eager to sell? Like, if you were going to guess about how they would approach this deadline, just with LeVert, with Turner, let's say with Sabonis as maybe the third, and, like, whatever other pieces, like, maybe, like, I think Torrey Craig, if the Cavs could find a way to throw him in their deal and, like, get him as well, it'd be a win for them. But some other tangential pieces, is this a team that you feel like it makes sense, if you were looking at this, that it kind of makes sense for them to actually kind of be sellers right now and try to do some kind of reset as we're looking at what this season is going to be for them?
I definitely think it makes sense because, one, they're bad. Like, I'm at the point with the Pacers this year where, outside of two teams you just said, Detroit and Orlando, every game they play, like, the expectation is basically they're not going to win. They're that level of bad this year, which is pretty jarring given their team. So that is one reason you become a seller. You're not very good. And the play-in actually is another reason I think the Pacers should be sellers. A lot of teams now talk themselves into, oh, we're close enough that we can make that. Let's be buyers. There's way more buyers in the NBA the last two seasons around the deadline than in, I don't want to speak to how long you've been covering the league, but basically since I've been covering the NBA, feels like there's way more buyers these last two seasons.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
I don't feel like, number one, I'm old. Number two, I do not feel as if there are, like, a lot of teams, as we're thinking about this, that are like, I could see. I mean, depending on, like, what you think of Detroit, what you think of some of these other teams, like, what they could be selling, if that's, like, worth kind of approaching, but like. Like, those teams are really bad, and then, like, but the Kings are who have players that I think are good and could be useful to teams, are not sellers. Like, they've been linked as a Ben Simmons team. Like, there are not a ton of teams that feel like they're gonna give up pieces, and maybe, like, that'll change. Like, some of that could, look at Portland. Like, they're 10th in the West right now, but, like, is Dame gonna come back? Like, what's gonna happen there? Like, maybe Larry Nance becomes, like, a trade piece because of that, right? Like, but, like, are the Spurs sellers? Probably not, even though they're, like, 13th right there. And now it's like you have four really bad teams, and then a bunch of teams that, like, I think you could convince me of a bunch of different things about them. And Indiana is one of those teams for me because, like, this is in a way that I think the Cavs, like, in some ways could aspire to be like, but in other ways, like, it's a cautionary tale. They've never bottomed out, right? Like, this is historically a consistent franchise. They've never, like, obviously hit, like, the highest of the highs for them is going toe to toe with Miami, probably. Maybe that first round series against the Cavs, that remains one of the most tense first round series I've ever seen in my life, where they took the Cavs to 7. But, like, they've never completely bottomed out, and it feels like, okay, maybe you only trade one of these guys. Maybe it's just, like, Turner, and you hold on to LeVert because you like him or whatever, and or maybe you trade both of them because you still have Brogdon, you still have Sabonis, you're gonna get a high draft pick. Like, maybe that's your path to reset. But it feels like this, like, they could be in position to reset in some way, even if it is not the traditional bottoming out in a way. And maybe that's, like, to me, why you look at this year and say, okay, maybe this is a chance for us to do that in a way we haven't had a chance to before.
Yeah, this is a unique opportunity because so many teams are buyers, right? If you're a seller, you could be one of only, like, 3 or 4 sellers in the NBA this season. A little behind the curtain for everybody, but the Locked On Network's preparing for our big mock trade deadline thing, and we fill out this form for the team we cover and say, hey, what do you fall in, seller, buyer, unknown? There's only, like, 3 or 4 sellers on the sheet, right? So if you're the Pacers and you're considering it, and you're really far from the play-in, the fact that you could have more bargaining power by being one of few sellers should make it more appealing to them. If I were in charge, I would be not drastically selling, but I would definitely be selling off some guys, especially guys like LeVert and Turner, who only have 1.5 years left. That said, though, like you mentioned, they never bottom out. They're never willing to be that bad team. Herb Simon literally goes on the record to detract from reports that suggest they might rebuild at all. He says, no, we can build on the go. That's what his exact words were. And I have no idea what that means, but the Pacers have done it before, right? Larry Bird did it. He got them from a title team to another title contending team, and the brawl ruined that plan. And they did it in 2013, and Kevin Pritchard got him Vic and Sabonis for PG. Like, they've kind of done it before, but it is really hard. There's a reason that not very many franchises try it or can do it. So should they be sellers? Probably, but their history suggests that it's really going to be tough to predict what they might do, and it actually could come down to, like, last-second decisions or what their record is 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, if they go on a little hot streak, that could change things. I mean, certainly Like I don't there's been leaks about what the Cavs are going to do. I think they are more likely to be buyers than not, but like this is silly season. Like sometimes even the best, like you're gonna get some stuff that is a little sus as we're kind of looking at there. But all right, after the break, we're getting into what Caris LeVert has actually been this year for the Pacers under Rick Carlisle, first year and under Rick as he's gone back to Indiana and they've kind of been with there as we just outlined. But first, going to tell everyone about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as they continue the march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, and that means a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today with, and you receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All you got to do is use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football to basketball to hockey to boxing and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Remember, promo code Locked On for your 50% welcome bonus. Okay, Tony. So tell me, what has Caris LeVert coming off of, the cancer scare that he had, which we shouldn't forget about, coming off of a new head coach after what happened with Nate Bjorkgren last year? What has it been for Caris LeVert in this NBA season? Like, how have you kind of looked at him as a player? Has he gotten better? Has he been the same? Has something about his game changed? What is Caris LeVert?
Be prepared for several cliches about sports coming your way. It's been the tale of two seasons for one Caris LeVert. He started out with this back injury thing that made him miss the first week or so of the season, and that is the first thing I'll say about LeVert's play and his skills is he's not often available. He does miss a lot of time. Injuries are a concern for him always. Any buyer needs to consider that. We might talk about that in the future. But the tale of two seasons with LeVert is like this, and it almost is exactly half his games at this point. So he came back from the injury, like he wasn't supposed to be good right away, and this is his third coach in like 6 months at that point because he got traded.
And we should just note like that for NBA players, for like them navigating that stuff. I like there are some times where I think sometimes the excuses we'll get about stuff are like kind of just like some nonsense. The coaching and the lack of like structure, I think matters more than I think sometimes we're willing to acknowledge, especially when like you go from like, I would imagine, I don't know if they talked about this candidly or if they would, but I would bet you that him going from whatever happened with Bjorkgren to Rick is like weird in some way, right? Because like Rick Carlisle is Rick Carlisle. Like he has a reputation for what he is for a reason. And what if all the stuff about Bjorkgren is at least somewhat true, then like I don't know what that work environment was necessarily like after he came from playing for like Kenny Atkinson and stuff in Brooklyn before the trade.
Yeah, he played for in basically a calendar year, a little over that. He played for Kenny, Steve Nash, Bjorkgren, and Carlisle. Like that's a really crazy. It's hard to evaluate his growth as a player, but that's a lot of the cliches. I wasn't even going to really get into that, but I appreciate you sharing that insight because that is part of his story in the NBA. So he returns from this back injury and through December 1st, which I'll explain why that date's important in a second, 14 points a game, less than 3 assists per game, shooting 40% from the field and 26% from three. That is a bad NBA player. Yikes. On December 1st, TJ McConnell gets injured and Caris LeVert is now a more point guard role player or has the ball way more, is tasked with creating more for his teammates, is not just off ball slasher. He gets to play his role more, right? Mm-hmm. Since December 1st, right? So from December 3rd until the game they just played against the Pelicans, 23 points per game, over 5 assists per game, 47% shooting, 39% from deep, over 80% from the free throw line. So for him, it's really hard to pinpoint his season because he drastically changed roles and he got healthier at the same time. So I don't know what played more into his turnaround. But basically, right when McConnell got hurt, he improved a ton. And I asked him about practice right around then, like, what's going on with your passing? He's like, yeah, I'm just not asked to pass as much. And now he is, and he looks way better. So he's been getting all the way to the rim more. He's been setting up his teammates better. He's just picking his shots in general a lot better. So I think getting him in the right role has really helped him. And recently, he's been one of, if not the Pacers' best players and scorers on offense. They've really needed him. His defense is really weak. He always talks about how bad his closeouts are and how bad he feels like he played on defense in some games. It's really actually interesting that a player is that specific about something they're bad at and candid about it. But
I honestly respect it because like sometimes we like I get why. It's just sometimes I appreciate the candor. I love a bit of candor.
Yeah, they played. I can't remember who it was. If it was Phoenix or Boston last week, but he was just like, "Yeah, my closeouts were bad in this game." I was like, "Oh, okay,
Respect.
yeah, you're right." But I'm glad he said it. And some like when he plays against Bradley Beal, he plays good defense. Like he knows he's a matchup, gets up for defense kind of guy. But all that is to say, now that I'm 3 minutes into my answer, his season has been, I think, pretty good in general. Once he figured out his role, once Carlisle figured out the best role for him, and once he kind of settled into a groove coming off of his injury, his stats basically mirror, what he was last year. A little bit better from deep, but in general about what he was last year. So, given that an injury has been involved in both of those seasons, I'd say that's about the player he is in general on average. If you look at his stats,
so just kind of to give people an idea of just like straight up kind of what that is. This year,
sure.
Yeah, I'm just pulling this from Cleaning the Glass. Usage rate of 28.3, so has the ball a ton in his hands. Assist percentage at 21.8, which is a little lower than the last couple of years, but still like relatively good for he's listed as a combo here, but that's still pretty good. Not a great assist usage ratio, but that just it's basically because I don't think it's not like passing is like a massive thing. And he doesn't turn the ball over a ton either, which is good. As far as shooting goes, shooting frequency, so 28% of his shots at the rim this year. 30% of his shots come from three, which is pretty low for a combo. Ton of mid-range shots. And then as far as accuracy goes, overall, effective field goal percentage, 49.7, 65% at the rim, which is pretty good and would be a career best for him, aside from his rookie year in Brooklyn when he was 22. Now he's obviously, that's 5 years ago, it's 27. 41% of all of his mid-range shots and 33% on threes. So 35 on corner threes, 33% on non-corner threes. That like feels like a very Caris LeVert kind of reality to me, right? Like that feels kind of what he is. And if you look at like his true shooting year over year, it's stayed pretty steady. It has, his effective field goal percentage has remained pretty steady. Like he is a plus offensive player. It feels like the numbers would lead me to believe, Tony, he is like a plus offensive player to some degree. And your taste may vary based on like what you think of his shot profile and stuff. Maybe like a slight negative on defense, but like can be better if he gets up for it. And I would just expect the Cavs would like ask him to get up for it in a meaningful way at times because that's just what they are. And he's overall, like, I think a positive. And I think some of him could be a little bit of like eye of the beholder with him just because of the way he plays. And let me ask, A, is that true? And B, what has Carlisle thought of him? Because that feels like it will matter here to some degree. If Carlisle's like, I want this guy, I want to build with him going forward, then maybe it's less likely he gets moved. Like that to me feels like a possibility as a factor in kind of what we're talking about here, because like I don't suspect that like Rick Carlisle is going to be cool like running it all the way down to the studs of this roster and then starting over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your evaluation of LeVert was pretty good, and the stats tell his story pretty well. Like we just kind of detailed. Look at you fist bumping for the YouTube watchers.
I got my locked on polo. I always do the wrong side. Got my Tampa Bay Rowdies hat. I'm doing.
I have a Tampa Bay Rowdies jersey. Wait, I'm not kidding. This is like the wild. Shout out to the NSL.
Shout out to the Rowdies. I was just in Tampa for work shots, and I bought this in the airport. I was like, I'm not buying a Bucks hat. I'm not buying a Rays hat. I'm not a hockey guy.
I saw the Tampa Bay Rowdies play the Indy 11 once, and I was like, those are sick jerseys, and I found them online. I bought it right away.
The English legend George Best once played for the Rowdies back in the heyday of the 70s. You love some soccer history in Locked On Cavs, but continue.
Wow, there we go. So the thing with LeVert
is really what I want to do. I just want to talk about soccer half the time, but that's just,
something he's worked on this season, and this will be something for him forever, is when he gets all the way to the rim, he's awesome, right? Because very few people can keep Caris LeVert in front of him. He's very shifty with the ball. He's got a good handle. He's got a good package of moves. He just loves floaters. He loves floaters, and he makes them sometimes, and some other times he doesn't, right? And this season, he's shooting a pretty close to, like you said, a career best from the rim. Like when he gets all the way there, he's so good, and it puts so much more pressure on the defense and allows him to be that creator and passer that can play point guard and two guard. But he just gets so obsessed with his floater sometimes, and in some games, that's fine, right? Like when you're playing against really elite rim defenders and you need a guy who can drag him out a little bit, sometimes that's good, but a lot of times it can sink his effectiveness. And he has got an inconsistent three-pointer. Some nights it's good, some nights it's bad. I mean, that's a lot of players who aren't good three-point shooters. But he is certainly tantalizing on offense because of that, because what he needs to do to be really good is right there. He does it sometimes, but he doesn't do it all the time. So how that fits on a good team is going to be fascinating. How Carlisle feels about him, he's always lauded him publicly. You never really know what to make of how coaches speak about players and pressers, but the way he talks about him publicly is like, yeah, this guy's very important to our team and our offense. He's a great creator. We need him to play that role. And especially since, like I mentioned, he took over at point guard, Carlisle's been a little more positive about what he's had to do, because Malcolm Brogdon has also only played 3 games in about a month. So Caris has been super needed as the ball handler, creator, scorer guy for this team. So yeah, like you said, I don't think Carlisle even said it to Jared Greenberg when they played the Heat on TNT, that he's like, no, I don't want to coach a rebuilding team, right? So insert that into whatever your thoughts are about where the Pacers are headed, but they'll still have Brogdon if they trade LeVert. No, not a huge thing, and they've been playing really well with their young guys recently. But I think Carlisle likes him, but also understands what his flaws are and the way that Carlisle likes to play, which is really spread out and with some movement and with some nice offensive sets, but not too many offensive sets that really fit what he likes to do. So do I think Carlisle and Caris are like the perfect match? No. But do I think Carlisle likes the way he plays? Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other thing about LeVert that I think is interesting, and you tell me, and this is, if people came over from Locked On Pacers and listening to this or watching this, like I would like to see LeVert play on a team that has that it is more spaced out, and it's hard. I mean, Turner's become a pretty good 3-point shooter. I think a very good 3-point shooter for his position. That's not what Sabonis is, but that feels like if you were going to ever maximize what he's going to be, it feels like getting him to a spot where there's a ton of spacing would be a way to kind of maximize some of what he does, kind of cater to him to some degree, and maybe not build your whole team around him, so to speak, but to a degree, you could have a ton of spacing around him to just kind of let him have more room to dive into and attack into. That could work. That's not exactly Cleveland, which is, I think he's one of my more interesting trade targets just because of the ball handling aspect of his game. But the shot making as far as getting to his spots in the middle, I think is something they could still use. It's not exactly the most spaced out, spread out team as long as you're playing Okoro, Mobley, and Allen, or depending on how else you can get it. And Markkanen's going to be out for a while now, so it's all kind of tricky. But Tony, let's get into some possible trade options here, some scenarios after the break. And if you like his fit or not on this Cavs team, as you understand them, we'll get into that after the break. But first, going to tell everyone about our friends at Built Bar. Tony, do you have a favorite Built Bar flavor?
I do. Peanut butter brownie is easily my favorite Built Bar flavor.
Oh, great. Honestly, any of the ones with brownie, like the coconut brownie chunk, A+, cookie dough in its own is A+. Look, Built Bars are great. They're covered in 100% chocolate. They're not these chalky, gross protein bars you probably grew up eating if you played sports. They're actually delicious to eat. They have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein in most of them. Look, it gets that sweet tooth. It gets that protein bump for you. You can't really go wrong. And look, there's so many great flavors. The Tony's favorite, as he said, peanut butter brownie. There's cookies and cream, which is Evan's favorite. My favorite is probably cookie dough, but you could tell me salted caramel or mint brownie is my favorite, depending on the day. They're always coming out with new limited time flavors as well. So you got to check out built.com often to see what's up. It's a new year. It means New Year's resolutions. Use Built Bar and use them to help you reach your resolutions. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Tony, I ask you point blank. Do you like Caris LeVert's fit on the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I do, now that Sexton is hurt. Yes. I think that actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Did you not expect that answer?
That's an interesting caveat, because I have thought about the idea of if they trade for him, if they trade for LeVert, let's say, and you say, okay, we're going to still bring back Sexton on a reasonable contract next summer. I think this team is so lacking for ball handlers and dudes who know what to do with the ball in their hands that you'd have to stagger them. And that, I think there's probably a cap on what you want to pay Sexton at that point. But I do think you could make all of him, Garland, and Sexton work to some degree if you stagger, because I think they're lacking some of that offensive juice, particularly post Rubio.
I was gonna say, I guess I mean Sexton and Rubio, but yes, you get it.
But the Sexton thing is in terms of the long-term building, and LeVert is 27. He's a little bit older than the Allen, Mobley, Garland kind of nucleus that is 23 and under right now. But he's not this isn't a 1 year, theoretically, this is not a 1.5 year rental and he's going to go off into the sunset. Right? Theoretically, this is a guy that you maybe want to keep into his 30s if things go correctly.
Yeah, I like the fit in especially with no offense to the Cavs, who are top 4 in the East right now. A team that's bench ball handler rotation right now is Rajon Rondo, Lamar Stevens, maybe Kevin Pangos every once in a while.
It's very telling that Brandon Goodwin who was a hardship exception signing and then was signed to a 2-way deal. Has played over Kevin Pangos, because it's just that has buddy.
LeVert is obviously a better handler than all these guys, and so yes, he's a good fit on the Cavs for that reason specifically. honestly, not playing Rondo is a benefit of its own. Look, Rondo's fine. Like, he's a good vet. There's a reason the Cavs got him. I don't want to say that was the wrong acquisition for them or anything, but LeVert would add a lot to what the Cavs specifically need. And honestly, given what he's good at, like his ideal role on a good team is that sixth man juice guard, right? Not like Jordan Clarkson levels of shooting and stuff like that, but like prime Lou Will kind of role. Like that's kind of where LeVert fits the best, and that's kind of where the Cavs have the biggest hole, especially with Rubio and Sexton hurt. So especially this year, but even if they keep Sexton, yeah, his fit with the Cavs is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the playoffs for this team, which is like a nutty thing to say. I didn't think I would be like talking to someone, from in the network being like, let's think about how the Cavs will make in the playoffs. Like they are going to get, like, I think of it as like the Knicks last year. The Knicks just didn't have enough creation when it came to the playoffs. Like that will be the Cavs this year if the roster kind of exists as it is. Tony, as far as fake trades go.
Oh boy.
Okay. So look, the obvious, the obvious starting point, if you're Cleveland, is, hey, we have this Ricky Rubio expiring contract. Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, he's done for the year. Not going to play again. Don't know what's going to happen. We're throwing this up on the screen on YouTube. That works straight up. That works. You could do that 1-for-1. Picks obviously would have to go to Indiana. I don't know if I want to do 2 for LeVert. I think 2 first for LeVert is tricky. I would do maybe like 1 and like one of the Cavs seconds. They have like this Houston second that's kind of interesting. The injury history and stuff. Like I think 2 would be a little steep. But like Rubio as like the salary matching is the place this has to start. Do you think that kind of trade that is like, okay, we're going to save you some money. This isn't going to be like a basketball move. We're going to save you some money, Herb Simon. Is that appealing to them, would you think?
Yes. So the tax is scary this year, so they can't add a lot of money this year, and that only adds $300,000. It's not a big deal, but yeah, that is an interesting value. They get a first, but the first, if it's this year, is going to be crappy, and like all the Cavs firsts that they can trade now are kind of crap, right? Because they're good now. The Cavs are good, right?
Yeah, but like it's,
you got to hope that second is awesome.
I think if the Cavs they have this Houston second for this year, so that's
going
to be
good.
like
good.
That's as far as second round picks go. Like that is like one of the ones you theoretically would want to trade.
Yep. The Pacers used the top second round pick last year to jump up 9 picks into the first round. Like that, they have value, right? They're definitely a useful thing. So I think that value's pretty close. Let me ask you some questions about the Cavs.
Yeah.
I'm very confident I know the answers already. I just want to ask, is Sexton off the table completely? That is question.
No.
Okay. Is Isaac Okoro off the table completely?
I think the answer is no, but is it for LeVert? I don't know.
Okay. So this one I'll just propose straight up and tell me what you think. Chetty plus Okoro. That's the salaries. That's perfect. Is that too much?
Do the Cavs have to include picks?
You tell me. How close is that? So here's the thing. The Pacers don't like trading for picks. Kevin Pritchard likes trading for either like undervalued young guys or like, wow, this guy's clearly got some skills already and can be something. And the problem is those guys are usually more valuable, obviously. But that seems like more of a Pacers trade would be something like Chetty plus Okoro or something that sneaks Sexton in there because his value's at an nadir because of his injury, stuff like that. Not that they wouldn't accept your trade. I'm just throwing other stuff at you.
Well, and it's like if you're going to trade for Sexton, you have to want to sign him to a contract.
Correct.
Like that is real. Like if the Pacers want him and they're willing to do that, I don't think that's like untenable. That's just that's like an interesting trade because I could see the appeal of not trading picks because it's cost controlled assets, and I don't think I think Jetty is like certainly like movable. Like he played 11 minutes on Monday. Like he post Rubio, he has not been the same. He had a really nice bounce back, and he's not been nearly as good, I think, since we've seen Rubio go down because them tied to the table is like a really useful thing for him. But Okoro is, he could be a guy that gets squeezed out later down the line, but he's on this like he's still on his rookie scale contract, and like he's a key point of attack guy for them. I think that is a little bit trickier for this kind of trade. I think if they were going to make a big swing for like Jaylen Brown, for Brandon Ingram, like that's where like Okoro becomes like more of a trade piece. I wonder if he would be movable in this kind of deal. I think if I'm looking at options, I'm gonna put this. I think that what would be interesting to me And I think where you can maybe get Cleveland willing to give up picks, or like I think they would, I think, flip Osman your way if you wanted to go the way Sexton. I think it's possible, but it really depends on what the other team I think thinks of Sexton in a lot of ways. I think one of the things that would be interesting, and the tax part of this becomes tricky because like they don't want to pay the tax, and I think that's very fair. They have this JaVale McGee trade exception that is worth $4.2 million. If they could squeeze in, like, well, none of these guys fit. That's the problem. Like I think like if you're like they would like to like get a Justin Holiday, get a Torrey Craig, but those guys make more than this trade exception would make Chicago hard. Like, and like Osman going out doesn't really like it's gonna help them have to maybe push them closer to the tax in a way they don't want to be. And like no one, like there's no reason for bad teams. There's no reason for like the Cavs to play the tax. You know what I mean?
Right.
I kind of think if we're getting down to this, like I think Rubio and picks for LeVert is like the realistic way.
I agree. I just wanted to pry about because Sexton I don't think the Pacers would do just because of his injury and the fact that they'd have to pay him over $100 million in a couple months. But
I don't know if you'd have to pay him over $100 million.
A lot of
he's gonna go into RFA, and guys have never taken the qualifying. His free agency is going to be the most fascinating things of the summer. And like, I know he's not like on people's list of like, as like an A-level guy in terms of like where he's going to fall in the hierarchy. I think his free agency is going to be fascinating. I think because he got hurt at the worst time possible, like for him and his contract possibilities and for him developing with this Cavs team. But like, if Indiana likes him, I think like that is doable. And maybe they would take back like a wing and some, like, it just feels like it is one of those things like we won't know to some degree, like what other teams think about Colin until like theoretically they've seen his medicals. Theoretically, like they get to talk to Cleveland about it, and theoretically, if they trade for him, that signals that they like him. But it doesn't seem like I don't know if that is something we know like concretely. Like,
right?
I mean, we there's reported like interest from the Cavs, and sometimes some of that stuff can be like, it can be a little overblown. Like it can be like a certain person in the front office, and it's this is silly season. Like this is the thing. I think Okoro would be a no-go in a LeVert deal, but like
that makes sense.
I don't know.
I was just that is what I feel like the Pacers, Okoro specifically, is what I feel like the Pacers would try to do. But definitely the Houston second is a perfect bridge because like everyone alive, I read 2 firsts for LeVert and I was like, no, like
that was some elite leak.
Like I covered the team and I think LeVert's good and on a better role could have more value to a new team. But 2 firsts is too much.
Yeah.
Like they traded Vic for him too, and Vic had no like very weird value at that point, so I don't want to say anything. But Vic didn't have 2 firsts value either, right? And Caris hasn't lived up to that level of billing. So yeah, that's rosy, but. So that's why I like that Houston second. That's a good way to make it interesting. Or even you have San Antonio second, which could be better than Houston. That's close as well. Yeah. That's right in that realm. So, there's some that is interesting, I think. And I'm assuming the Cavs will just lottery protect it because we all love semantics, but whatever. They're going to make the playoffs. So yeah, that's pretty close. I think that's pretty close. But I think also, Herb Simon, who wants to build on the go. I just don't think a guy who's not going to play for him this season and picks is going to do it for his owner, for the owner. I like value-wise, that's a great trade and kind of satisfies what I think the Pacers should be trying to do. But I think the way the Pacers operate and their ownership would not do that, if that is fair.
If you, Tony East, were the GM, would you do Rubio, a first, and one of those seconds for LeVert, and that's the package?
I think I would, yeah.
Okay, I think I would too.
I think part of it as well, with absolutely no offense to the Cavs, who I think are a lock to make the playoffs, is I don't know if I believe they'll be as good as they've been all season going forward, and that could end up being like the 18th pick, which would be pretty spicy to get as
well. Prime for some regression next year. If you asked, well, and even if you just look at like if you wanted next year's and you took that bet, I could see a team trying to do that and saying, hey, like maybe you're going to regress next year,
Right.
I don't know if I bet on like that happening with Mobley to some degree, but it's possible.
The Cavs are definitely, I think, going to be better eventually. Like Mobley's amazing.
Yeah,
right.
But these things are never like linear. Like the
you
tracks
would need it
go...
to be right. Yeah, of course. As the Pacers know, they almost knocked the Cavs out of the playoffs, and they've been pretty trash ever since. So it's never how you plan for it to go. So that's pretty close. I think we're pretty close to a deal, and if that's the best offer I had on deadline day, I would take it.
Okay, I think it's fair. Tony,
We
any
did it.
final thoughts on Caris LeVert? We solved it. We didn't solve world peace, but we solved this trade.
Final thoughts? Yes.
Yeah.
Isaac Okoro to the Pacers, please. That would
Okay,
be lovely.
You've endeared me with the Tampa Bay Rowdies comments. You've endeared me just bringing the good vibes. We talked before. You have these wonderful NBA owls behind you that people can see if they're watching on YouTube. And you're an Isaac Okoro guy. This is all I've ever wanted, Tony. This is all I've ever wanted. This is incredible.
He's like the best possible Chris Duarte sidekick on the wing. I just love the fit. It would be
watching Isaac Okoro put dudes in like his personal defensive like hell zone is like,
it's amazing.
Like, I understand his offense is like shaky and like sometimes that is where we are at covering this league is like it is offensive driven. I love watching dudes put dudes in like in hell and defense. It rocks. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, the Pacers' best perimeter defender is like a 32-year-old dude, so they could really use something interesting.
Yeah, shout to Duarte though. Like Duarte.
Kid's good.
I'm gonna ask before you go, is what's up with TJ Warren?
I don't know.
Okay.
There was a world that if the Pacers knew, they would tell us what was up.
Okay, so but just before like his season has come around, I was like interested in a could you like dump Kevin Love's salary and like get TJ Warren and LeVert? But like that doesn't seem like.
See, the thing about it is the reason I think that they still like him a lot is like part of the reason I ran it back is they were like, yeah, we want to see how these dudes fit with TJ Warren, and now it's a trade deadline and he still hasn't played, right? So like if I knew that he wouldn't have played by now before the season, I would have hit the Pacers a little harder for running it back with a group that went 34-38. And here we are. So not looking great. I have no idea what's up with him. He does look pretty close to returning when he works out, but they haven't said anything of the sort. So what do I know?
You'd love to see it. All right, that's going to be it for this episode of Locked On Cavs, a crossover with the great Locked On Pacers podcast. Find Tony on Twitter at TEastNBA. Read his writing at places like Forbes. Check out the Locked On Pacers podcast. It is your best bet to get informed on the Indiana Pacers. Perhaps if the deal gets done, we'll run this back and we'll get into it. Look, and if you want a great second listen, maybe a third listen after you've listened to Locked On Pacers, go check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. All right, I'm Chris. I'll be back. We'll be back Monday, I think, after the Cavs have this little weekend. Everyone, be well. Thanks again to Tony for coming through.